welcome to the showcase, the FYN Departmental Showcase. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I am here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I encourage all of you to acknowledge the land that you're on as well. So as we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space on questions that you have by using the Q&A button. In the language of your choice, you can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. Just for awareness, all attendee microphones and cameras are deactivated. The chat is disabled, but we'll use it to send you resources and anything that's mentioned during our presentation. As mentioned, please use the Q&A button to ask your questions. Again, vote for a question by pressing the thumbs up button. FYI, this session will be given in English only. The French session will follow at 3 to 4. For those of you who want to share with those you know, all the sessions are being recorded and will be available on the FYN YouTube channel in the 24 hours following the session. So today we have 3 panelists joining us. Well, 2. I'm the moderator. And I guess I'll put on the panelist hat depending on the question that's asked. So like I said, later I'll welcome Huda and Alfonso. So you'll meet them shortly. But first I'd like to explain a little bit of the mandate of the RCMP and a little bit about myself. So my name is Jason Pascal. I'm currently a constable with the RCMP, 20 years of service. I immigrated from St. Lucia many moons ago, tiny Caribbean island. You guys might know if you've been watching the Olympics. We had a gold medalist in the 100-meter women's sprint. That's a tiny island that I'm from, Julian Alfred. She won the gold in France. I hold a bachelor's degree from the University of Ottawa and for a degree in criminology and sociology. My first posting in the RCMP was Surrey, BC. I was there for 4 years. And since then, I've been in Ottawa in various capacities in protective operations, cybercrime, security intelligence background, protective intelligence unit. So most of my career has been mostly protective. And of late, I recently transferred to the Anti-Racism, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Secretariat. I'll say I have many dream jobs, and this one is one of those as well. It is where I could give back. I believe policing is so much about giving back. And so I am in that perfect spot 20 years in and looking forward to retirement, where I could pass on to the next generation coming after me my experience, not just in policing, but in community work as well. Outside the RCMP, like I mentioned, I do enjoy mentoring young people. I'm a golf fan, a golf player. I don't play very well, but I try to play very well. But my big thing is relationship building. I love building relationships, and I think they are the things that build you or the things that break you. If you're surrounded by great people, you usually end up doing great things in life. I'm a big believer in that. So that's a little bit about myself. Hello, welcome to the RCMP. Just a little bit about the organization. The RCMP purpose: from coast to coast, at the community, provincial, territorial, and federal levels, we work to prevent crime. We enforce the law, of course. We investigate offenses. We keep Canadians and their interests safe and secure. We assist Canadians in emergency situations. We also offer expertise in at the international level. Peacekeeping missions is one of those that we're most known for. But we also do specialized training for other police agencies across the world. If you join the RCMP, those are the things that you are exposed to. Those are things that you have a chance to do to make a difference, not just in Canada, but across the world as well. And we, like I mentioned earlier, most of my service was in protective, and part of that was intelligence gathering. So we share intelligence with our trusted partners, along with CSIS and other organizations, to disrupt and dismantle criminal operations. So that's a little bit about the RCMP. And on the ground here in Canada, we do have our three main areas of responsibility. Uh, the three being contract and Indigenous policing, federal policing, and specialized policing services. So all the things that we do fall under one or three of those uh, key areas of responsibility. Our members, we work in over 700 detachments in 150 communities across the country. We also provide policing services in more than 600 Indigenous communities. So that's a little bit about the RCMP. It's a little bit about the organization that I'm proud to be part of. And so I will talk a little bit more about myself and what I'm involved in right now, but now I'll just introduce our first panelist. I'll say a little bit about him and I'll let him speak about himself and what he's done. But I got connected with Alfonso. Alfonso? It's been about 8-10 months now since we crossed paths in our anti-racism units, now artists. And Alfonso is a salt in the light, literally. He sends a good morning message to us on our team chat, and he just gets your day started off right. So Alfonso, you have the floor.
Hi, folks, and thanks, Jason, for such a warm introduction. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm very lucky to work on a very supportive team. And so my name is Alfonso Ralph Mendoza Manalo. I'm located in Toronto, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a first-generation Filipino Canadian immigrant, and I'm openly gay. I'm currently a junior policy analyst at the Anti-Racism, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Secretariat, specifically in the race-based data collection team. Before that, I worked in equity, diversity, inclusion policy and information management policy. I just graduated, so this is my first year out of undergrad. I majored in Asian studies with a specialization in Southeast Asian studies, and public policy with a minor in migration. Aside from that, I've worked for a lot of NGOs and in the academic sector. So I've done research on Southeast Asian care worker migration patterns, on conflicts in Southern Philippines, and on other things related to comparative politics and comparative public policy. So it's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm also the current co-chair of the RCMP's Pride Network, and I'm excited to hear all of your wonderful questions. It's a very full circle moment for me because I started off as a co-op student here in the RCMP, so it's I understand the stress and just the general excitement to start your careers and not knowing where to start. It can be daunting, but I hope that this talk between Jason, Huda, and I really helps you folks consider a career maybe in the RCMP. Thank you.
Awesome, Alfonso. Thank you so much. As you guys can see why I say he's a salt in the light. The guy just exudes positivity all the time. And if Alfonso's a salt in the light, Huda is the person I aspire to be when I grow up one day. I met Huda, I think it might have been about 6 months ago at a conference, and I heard Huda's story. Brought tears to my eyes. This toughened veteran cop. I heard her experiences, and I share a lot of the stuff that she's gone through in a different organization, of course, but truly impactful person, great heart for people, great heart for the work. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself. I've spoken a little bit too much there. I'm gonna get a little bit emotional there, so I'll let her introduce herself. Huda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jason. Good afternoon, everyone. Really pleased to be with you here today, and really pleased to be working with amazing people like Jason and Alfonso, who I'm learning a lot from because I am new to the RCMP, as Jason has mentioned. So my background is I worked as an intelligence officer at the Canadian Security Intelligence Service for about 16 years. I worked there in counterterrorism, counterintelligence, as well as the security screening program there. I was seconded to the British Intelligence Service and lived there in London for a year, working on their 911 moment in terms of the 7/7 and 27 attacks of 2025. And we're just getting into the 20th anniversary of that. So time has gone by really fast. But I come to the RCMP after leaving CSIS due to systemic racism and concerns that I had raised within the organization. I've written a book about that experience because I think the more we share about these experiences, the more we're able to tackle them in the right way. My book is called Agent of Change: My Life Fighting Terrorist Spies and Institutional Racism. And I'm pleased that it's getting a lot of recognition within this community, but also abroad. A review of it has been done on the CIA's website, and it won first prize for on the Hill Times in 2023. So it's that experience, that operational sort of experience, as well as experience with structural racism, that has prepared me really well in my role as an anti-racism policy team senior advisor. And I just hope, and I'm thankful for the opportunity that the RCMP has afforded me to drive change.
Awesome. Awesome, Huda. She's just giving you a little bit of a surface of her background. So, I guess we'll go to the Q&A now. So we have some questions here. Let's start. Let's have a conversation. I guess, Huda, you could probably take this one. Do you have any issues with traveling internationally? Are there countries that the RCMP tells you not to travel to or through?
Personally, given the fact that I worked in security and intelligence, obviously there are some countries that I cannot travel to, and specifically would be countries like Iran, where even if you're not conducting intelligence work, even the fact that I've publicly announced that I'm no longer working in that field, you're always perceived to be doing that kind of work, and it could be a danger to travel in certain areas. But overall, like Europe and other African countries, some Middle Eastern countries, you're still able to travel and enjoy yourself. And obviously, if you run into any trouble, there's always folks at the embassy that can provide assistance.
Awesome. Awesome. I like that answer. Just a little addition from me. I'm in a different role, obviously, in law enforcement. When we do deploy peacekeeping wise, the RCMP does have a threat assessment that they do for members and whether or not they should deploy to those areas. So, in a sense, they do tell you where you should and should not go as an employee. As obviously as a person, you could choose to go where you want to go, but obviously you're still wearing that hat as a police officer. So probably wise to heed the advice of your employer in that sense. Next question. So Alfonso, I'll let you take this one. How would you describe the work culture in the RCMP, or more specifically, let's say artists? How would you explain the work culture there?
I think I'm extremely lucky to work in artists. I think our secretariat, it's genuinely filled with folks who genuinely want to support one another and each other's communities. And I think that is something that is very rare to see. I think when you work in anti-racism and equity work, sometimes the longer that you're in the space, the more jaded or cynical someone becomes. And oftentimes with that, it feels as if communities are fighting for scraps of initiatives that are supposed to be helping out, helping them ameliorate themselves. But when it comes to Eridis, it generally feels as if we're here to learn from one another. And every time that we speak, even at our meetings, we try our best to see the similarities between our communities. And we're very clear when it comes to knowing that like oppression itself is systemic. And I think we all understand that as individuals, that in order for us to accomplish that, we all have to support one another, given that we're all equity-seeking groups and we're all discriminated, oppressed in a certain way. I think on top of that, there's a sense of humility in everyone within our areas, which I genuinely enjoy, where it doesn't hurt when we say, I don't know. We're not judged for it. And in fact, I think in many ways we celebrate that aspect that when we acknowledge that we don't know, it also shows a willingness for us to learn. I think on top of that, everyone in the team just generally wants to do good. And so it's, I think, one thing that when I talk to folks one-on-one on what's a personal development that you want, what's a personal goal that you want to work on, for a lot of us, it's to draw boundaries. Just because we all, as people, we all genuinely want to help out. And I think that's it, is that we're very lucky to have supervisors, managers, and a director who recognizes when burnout can occur and can tell us, like, reaches out to us and says, hey, like, I know you have a lot on your plate. Maybe you should take a vacation. Maybe you should take the sick leave. And in other departments or units, you're not encouraged to do that, even though you're legally entitled to those leaves. So I think it's genuinely just such a great place to work in. And there's a lot of growth. I think the work itself isn't very predictable. And I'm sure Huda and Jason can attest to this. Like, you'll be met with so many files that really tests you and your ability to grow, because there's a sense of unfamiliarity to every single file, which is really exciting for the CV, but also for you to grow as a person holistically. But I think the RCMP as a department, it's just so huge. Like, there's about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Huda and Jason, there's about 30,000 or more employees. And so with each team, with each division, with each business line, there's a certain culture. But what I do want to say is that the RCMP, we do have a lot of room to grow, and we do acknowledge that. Like, I think we've done a lot of work in most recent years internally to try to ameliorate and improve how we treat folks from equity-seeking communities when it comes to retention, promotion, and just the general employment experience. But it really does vary on the job that you hold and the manager that you have. And honestly, I'm very lucky that in all of my positions in the RCMP, I haven't had a manager that wasn't there for my development. But it's just such a large department that you sort of have to cross your fingers that your manager's really there to help you. Thank you.
And Uda, I'll piggyback off of that, Alfonso's question. What drew you to this department? I mean, you have a breadth of experience in CSIS and other federal agencies. What drew you to the RCMP, and what would keep you there? Because you're newer. I would love to get that perspective for people who are thinking about the RCMP. What drew you to this organization? I'll give my answer after, but I'll let
Yeah.
you go first as a new member.
Yeah, do you know, just yesterday, I announced on LinkedIn that I am working for the RCMP, and it took me the 6 months to actually announce it. Okay. And this is after leaving government for some time and working in the private sector, and then getting back here. And I received so many congratulations. And it just felt like a good fit for me, because this is an organization that is within that national security portfolio and public safety. And so, the mission is similar to the experiences I have had. The mandate is public safety again. So it feels like a natural fit for me to be here, but also being afforded this opportunity to do what my calling has been, because I thought my calling was being an intelligence officer, but having done that, and I've done, some really good operational work that I did at CSIS, that structural racism part has been such a big part of that journey. And to be able to just come back to the RCMP, and be able to drive change again in that field from that experience. And it is just so wonderful. So that's what's going to keep me here. That's why I'm here. But actually, what will keep me here is the fact that I've met such amazing people. I know in terms of the culture, what Alfonso was saying, the first time I was invited to speak at the RCMP, I was given about an hour and a half to talk about my book. And I went on for 3 hours and nobody interrupted me. And there was just such a welcoming environment, a safe environment for me. in a place that is so familiar to me and in the community that I feel I'm part of. And it was really different to an audience at, for example, a university or other places where people don't understand the organization and the culture that we come from. So I feel at home. I feel I have an opportunity to drive change, and that's meaningful for me. It is what I want to do for a long time. So I hope to do actually stay at the RCMP, and I think it's a wonderful place to work.
That's so good. So good. See, I told you guys, there's a lot of depth to her. Um, Alfonso, you want to chip in on this? What drew you to the RCMP? I know you said you were a graduate student, but you want to elaborate on that at all? Or
Sure.
go ahead.
Thanks, Jason. I think my journey to the RCMP honestly wasn't planned. I genuinely thought that the RCMP wouldn't hire someone like my understanding of what a Mountie was someone who was stern, not someone who was racialized, and not someone who was part of the twist LGBTQA plus community. So when I applied on the co-op job board, I entered the interview with the thought of I'm not gonna get, like, I genuinely didn't think I'd get the job. So I was like, I'm not gonna get the job anyways, but I might as well get something out of this interview. And if it's information, it's information. And at the time, it was the start of COVID. So it was, I think, post George Floyd, and the rise of explicit anti-Asian hate racism. And so I asked the interviewers at the time what they were doing to counter that in information management, how they were collecting the data, retaining it, how they're disclosing it. And that actually landed me the job. And each time that I think I'm about to get fired at the RCMP for speaking up or for just stating how what I've heard from other communities, it actually works out. And I think that really is how I would define my experience with RCMP. I'm pleasantly surprised at how well and accepting it is. And I think that really is what makes me stay, is that I've met so many good folks along the way, sort of who I was mentioning, where it really gives you faith that even though as an institution, I know that we have a lot that we need to work on. And that's why I'm sure Jason and Huda can attest to this. That's why we're here as a secretariat. But when you work with folks who are like-minded, you have that sense of hope. And that's what drives you to stay and to do your mission and your work every single day. Thank you.
I love it, Alfonso, and I'll piggyback off of that with my own experience as a young 21-year-old in Ottawa, growing up in the Ritchie Bayshore area and finishing my degree in university, working as a conduct disorder counselor at a group home, and trying to seek my purpose and how I could best help my community. And I remember applying for the Ottawa Police, and they said I was not mature enough, and I'd been in community work for a better part of 7 years at that point, and worked in various capacities. And I was a little like, policing is not, maybe that's not the way I should go. And I thought about social work. And I went to one of my mentors at the time, my dad, and I asked him what I should do. And he said, well, if you really want to impact change, go for the best of the best. And at the time, he connected me with an inspector in the RCMP, and he guided me with my application. And I saw that police work was a place where I could initially actually think about keeping young men like myself, having gone as a new immigrant, getting in trouble with the police for not my own fault in some cases, and realizing that how quickly it could have been the other way, where I could have been in jail because that person actually understood when I explained to them my situation and my lack of understanding of the culture. And I thought to myself, how many kids coming to Canada don't have that person give them that break? And I'm like, if I am in that position of law enforcement, I could definitely impact that at a very small level. But as I've been in the work, I could probably say that I have impacted more than I thought, more than I could actually imagine. So it's a roundabout way to get where I got to. I had many chances to leave because of, again, institutional racism does exist in the RCMP. I've been a victim of it. But I always say, if you're not going through the fire to make it easier for the person coming after you, then you've kind of failed in that sense. So that's what keeps me here, is that I know that there are people coming after me. And even if my experiences have been ups and downs, like we've all had in our career. I'm best situated here to make that change and to influence those who are coming after me and the leaders of tomorrow. So that's why I stay, and a little bit of why I joined the RCMP. So the next question, Huda, I will send this one to you. This one has you written all over it. It is really great to hear positive experience from us. And this person asks, how do I reconcile this as a woman with the experience of harassment I hear about women experience in the RCMP? What about intersectional identities of ethnic minorities or other diverse identities? I'll leave you and give you the floor on that one, Huda.
Yeah, within the national security field, within the military, within the RCMP, within CSIS, within the entire public safety portfolio, sexual harassment, discrimination based on race, age, all of it is present. It's there. There's a better recognition now of the problem and the extent that it impacts the institution itself on the inside in terms of toxic workplace cultures. And there is that allocation of resources to tackle this, which is what, that's what we do. Alfonso, Jason, and I every day is to tap and tackle these systemic problems that we're encountering and people are encountering day in and out in these organizations. So there is that recognition. There is the call to action by the clerk. There are a number of reports that are coming forward acknowledging the problem and putting recommendations in place. And there was most recently the Auditor General report that looked at the RCMP and CBSA and other organizations and have determined that, yes, we have all these initiatives, but they're not being felt and the change is not coming in a timely manner. And so, there's a real need for accountability measures. There's a real need to continue the conversation, to keep the momentum, because there's always that resistance, and the resistance comes in so many forms, like, bureaucratic hurdles that you have to run through, or just people not accepting that this is a priority within the organization. So I think it's just about continuing that work and then really leveraging this opportunity that we have where there is a attention to this and a budget to it. So, and making sure we have people who understand doing the work. And I think that the RCMP, we do. That's what I have seen so far from the entire secretariat, the leadership that I'm working with, and it's been so refreshing, and so and we recognize intersectionality. That's a big part of, we're writing the anti-racism strategy and hoping to have it launched within the RCMP. It's the first anti-racism strategy in the fall, and a big part of that is intersectionality. And we also have the GPA plus unit that's looking at that and culture change as well. So, all of this is meant to make sure that equity-seeking groups, women, racialized people, as well as people living with disabilities and Indigenous communities, Inuit, Métis communities, all feel welcomed and see themselves within the RCMP. So increase in diversity and retention, and getting people to understand that we can't be a modern organization and we can't do the work, the mandate, it's that critical. Do the work, have the people that we train stay at the course. So there is all this recognition, and we're at it. And we have to understand that we have to celebrate successes, small as they may be, to keep the momentum and to keep going. But it's difficult work. It's work that's being done. And we continue to be challenged. So the public and everyone, like in government, the parliamentary reports, I hope they keep at it. So that we can better ourselves and be able to do our work effectively.
I got a little caught up in listening to Huda there. I forgot my job. Um, Alfonso, you wanna add a little bit to what Huda mentioned? I know that's in line with as well what you're working on. So go ahead.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Huda. I think Huda did a great job, a very comprehensive job of answering the question. I think the only thing I would like add a little bit is that in the last recent, I think since COVID, like that last half decade, the RCMP has had a lot more employee networks spring up. And so even though it takes a while for institutional change to really manifest and materialize, um, sorry, my mom's just vacuuming the house while I'm presenting, but we have employee networks now, such as the Pride Network, the RDEN, the Racially Diverse Employee Network, the Surge Sisterhood, the Indigenous Women's Network. And I think what's a plus is that now, given that the RSMP was so huge, you'd have folks that were working in detachments of like 3 to 5 people who wouldn't have anyone to turn to. And at least now you're able to meet folks that are like-minded and you feel at least emotionally supported with folks that understand your experience as well. And these networks aren't just support groups, but they're also advocacy networks. So I completely agree with what Huda was saying, where that external pressure to lobby the RCMP to do better is needed because for employee networks like us, we also need to hold on to these commitments and these legal obligations that the RCMP has to follow in order for us to advocate from within. And I think that's something it's like Huda said, you have to celebrate those small wins. And the popping up of these employee networks really is a small win. I see them being supported and just growing in membership moving forward. Thank you.
And just to add to what Alfonso was saying, just to sprinkle a little bit more on top about initiatives, we talked about employee networks. Within the RCMP itself, I'm part of a project called Dream. Dream is it's a project born out of the commissioner's 2024-25 priorities about recruiting and retaining a diverse task force. I think the acronym, I'll give it to you guys, is diversity, retention, and employee advancement model. So that basically you work for the RCMP, and some of the things identified are roadblocks that some employees harassment being one of them. Some things are not equal. Let's just call it that. And women and people from diverse groups, they do not have these opportunities to advance within the organization because it's an organization based in habit and a culture that needs change, and which we do work through in our unit. And this is one of the initiatives within the unit that seeks to pair employees with a mentor to help them through their career planning. Because when you go through these experiences, your first inkling is to leave because you don't want to be in that kind of environment. And so the program aims to address that issue and other barriers as well, to say, hey, you're valued, you're seen. And here is a mentor to guide you through these roadblocks that you may encounter. Here's somebody to guide you through how to write your resume to this position that you're applying for. There's somebody to coach you along and to support you. So the organization does recognize it. Like Huda and Alfonso mentioned, organizational change does take time. But we're hoping that our unit, artists, and the RCMP at large, they embrace these initiatives, these networks, the networks that challenge. Challenge is always good. I'm a fan of being challenged and challenging because that's the only way you grow. You don't grow by sitting on your couch, you grow in the fire. And I think the organization is at that point and they are rising to the occasion, albeit slowly, I'll be honest, but we're getting there. And so these initiatives are meant for that. And I think that's what we all are working on. That's what we're all working towards. Next question, Huda, I'll throw this one back at you. And Alfonso, you can answer this as well. What are the most transferable skills between intelligence officer and analyst? And they're giving you a shout out for your book, Huda. So what are the transferable skills between the intelligence officer and the role that you now have as an analyst? You did speak about it a little bit earlier, but maybe get into a little bit more specifics.
Yeah, so at CSIS, in terms of training, you're trained as an analyst as well as an investigator. So I spent my first 3 years doing a lot of training in analytical report writing, communication, verbal, and so on. And a lot of it was drafting reports between the Five Eye Intelligence as well as security partners, and looking at investigations in an analytical way and determining, problem solving, determining what next action we need to take. And then in terms of my investigative experience is, running operations, right? A lot of it interviewing individuals, looking at recruitment initiatives for sources. So what is transferable here is that communication skill is to, we want our strategy, our anti-racism strategy to be informed by people who are RCMP officers, members, within the RCMP. And so we do focus groups and do interviews and discuss issues that need to be raised in that strategy. And then, that rapport building, that, showing empathy, humility when you're speaking with people. So a lot of that verbal communication. And then, of course, the writing skills and that report drafting is a big part of it, as you draft a document as big as an anti-racism strategy and then continually go back to it, just like writing my book, going back to it and making sure that it's informed by your latest understanding of what's going on and what you're hearing from people, as well as other reports that are coming in that you're reading, you're analyzing, and you're, just picking at the recommendations and how you can apply them to your everyday work. So a lot of that kind of analysis that I was trained in is being used here, as well as interviewing and communication skills. And I think, as I said earlier, being in that national security portfolio, understanding what our TMP officers do, and I always tend to understand that, I also don't know. So just because I was an intelligence officer and, yes, CSIS was part of the RCMP in the past as a security service until 84. So we have similar culture and whatnot, but I don't assume. I count on my colleagues like Jason and others to inform me as well in terms of, what it's like to be in law enforcement and out on the streets. It's quite different from intelligence gathering. So, yes, there is transferable skills, but also a lot that I count on my colleagues to gain more knowledge on.
Alfonso, gonna go ahead.
Oh, to be very frank, I've never worked in intelligence. I think
Do the parallels between your transferable skills, where you were at to what you do now.
Thanks, Jason. I think honestly, my background really is research, like qualitative research, and I think a lot of it echoes what Huda was saying, where you really have to go in. Any good qualitative researcher should analyze their sources, and you have to be very clear that. I think one thing that was challenging, but it is transferable skill, is that when you're in school, your resources seem very formal, concrete, and material. But when you're a policy analyst, you might not necessarily have access to the leading open access research journal or professors in the field. And so you have to look for alternative sources. And I think that includes community groups, internal groups, employee networks. And so one of the transferable skills between all my jobs is adaptability. You have to find ways to conduct your research in ways and alter your research design process along the way. I think on top of that, I think at school you're taught to question and critically analyze. And that's the same thing as if you're a policy analyst. Policy might sound like a really big word, but in essence, what public policy is you're just telling a government or a unit or an institution how it's supposed to act. Some people think policy is written form, but it's not always you drafting a policy. It might be you providing input on folks that are drafting the policy or drafting a report, but in essence, you're an advisor in your own way. And so you also have to, I think another transferable skill is humility. Even though you're an advisor, as Huda said, you don't know everything. And you have to have that humility to ask folks within certain business lines and within certain communities how they're actually impacted by a policy. And I think the last one is you have to always be clear on and be open to the fact that a policy or program that you recommend can impact different people disproportionately. And so it's very important to have multiple sides of the coin. It sounds like such a vague term, but empathy is really needed for any good policy analyst because you have to understand how a certain policy will affect them and detach yourself from the work, even if it wasn't your intention. At the end of the day, the policy does affect a certain community in a certain way, and it's your job to help mitigate that. Thank you.
So good. I just learned a whole lot from the two of you in the 5 minutes you guys were both speaking about the intersectionality. I didn't see some connections there, but now I'm seeing them. Alfonso, this one's for you. I could jump in on this as well. I know something about working remotely. Says Alfonso, are you working remotely for an NCR-based team? That's a yes. If so, the second part of the question is what I'm asking. If so, how did you land that position? And is there support for regional employees working remotely for Ottawa in the RCMP?
I think, and Jason would have please feel free to jump in. I don't have management experience, but I landed this job. In fairness, I've never worked a day in the office. I've always been remote in all of my co-op positions. And I think it's because I started during COVID, and that's when remote work really like exploded and boomed. But a lot of it really comes down to your manager and your director, and their willingness to support you in that. I think you should really give a business case on as to why you're able to work remotely, and how you'll adapt to the team's culture. On top of that, I'm very lucky that most of the folks in my direct team work remotely. We're all based out of Toronto, except for one or two folks. But the team itself, all of our offices list as Ottawa. But I think there is support for regional employees to work at NRCan, a job in the National Capital Region, but it really depends on the director again. But the RCMP does have, since it's such a large organization, we have divisions and detachments all over the country. And so us folks in Toronto, we work fully remotely because we don't have many detachments or divisions here in the city. So we don't really have a direct workplace to report to. But depending on where you're in the country, if you can't advocate for fully remote work, you can maybe able to advocate you being able to work an international capital region job from the detachment or division that is closest to you. Thank you.
And to add to Alfonso's answer, and FYN could probably put some information on their website for that. A lot of the jobs for the government of Canada are on the GC Jobs website. And I think part of the last time I checked it was they do stipulate in the job position if it's remote work. And so the scenario where you'd advocate for remote work is where COVID happened, you were working from home, but now you have to come back to the office, as is my case. I'm in Ottawa, and I do come in September. I do have to go to the office 3 days a week or more. That's non-negotiable. That's legislated, so you got to go back to work. Alfonso himself is in Toronto, and he signed a telework agreement that allows him to work in that in Toronto. So that's a contract that he signed, and that's a contract that's being honored by the organization. So I hope I'm answering your questions. I think currently most jobs with the government of Canada, they do outline that you are working remotely or you're required to come to the office. So that would say to gently educate yourself and go on the website and find out which jobs you're interested in, whether it's an analyst position, whether it's a policy advisor. It does say in the job description what the job entails and if the job is remote or not. Next question. This one's a tough one. I know something about it, but yeah, so I'll take this one. And Huda, maybe you could jump in on that one as well. Could any of you elaborate on the differences and similarities between the roles of intel analyst and civilian investigators at the RCMP? So in terms of the intel analysts, I was that in many of my jobs in protective operations. The the jobs are very similar. They don't, the only difference is the enforcement portion of it. If you have intel that you have to act upon, and Huda could speak to this as well, when CSIS has someone that they found to be guilty of doing something, the law enforcement is called, and they themselves don't go and affect the arrest. They call the police of jurisdiction. They go and affect the arrest, and then Huda swoops in and gives all the evidence, and she's the shining star, and she puts somebody in jail. But we go and do the hands-on, and they assist in seizing the evidence that we found. They catalog it. They know what they're looking for. They are very hands-on in that regard. But the civilian and intel positions in the RCMP are very similar in that sense. Sometimes you have regular members like myself who are police officers who are working within those intel units, and there's a mix of civilian persons as well, and they both do the exact same job. So also a lot of it depends on the unit as well too. Some things are separate in terms of work and in terms of the clearance level that you have to do the investigation that you want to do. Some people within the unit may have a higher clearance level than the others, but there really is no difference in that sense, unless it's the enforcement side of things. Huda, did I kind of
Yeah.
encapsulate
Yeah,
that?
no, absolutely, Jason. I agree with everything. I actually want to answer another question, and that's
Sure.
about colonialism, because I know we don't have a lot of time,
Right.
and it's still like I think a lot of people have voted for that question as well. And it says, how does the
Yes.
RCMP cope with their colonial history while moving forward against systemic racism? I think that's a really, really important question. I think that there's been an acknowledgement from the RCMP in terms of our role in residential schools. I think there's been an acknowledgement in studies that demonstrate that, and Canadian Human Rights Commission findings, that there's been more profiling of Black and other Arab and other individuals within Halifax, but it's happened across the country. And there is, the RCMP now, issued an apology, is looking at issuing an apology to Black community in Nova Scotia, giving all the racial profiling that's happening there. So that colonial history, that racism, discrimination, colonialism, all of it is how the organization was structured and shaped. And the result has been a lot of concerns that relate to discrimination, misogyny in the workplace, xenophobia, all of it. And so that's what we're about right now in my unit, is how do you identify these policies, as subtle as sometimes they can be, and how do you impact change? How do you hold people accountable? How do you do this? Right. So it's such an important question. So thank you for individuals that have raised this. But I think acknowledgement is the first thing. And I feel the RCMP is doing a really good job on that front. We can do more for sure. But that has started, and these conversations are ongoing. And what I love about our initiative out of Halifax and the people leading it, and I heard a lot about it. We had a retreat about it, and the officers came and spoke to us. It's just so genuine, it comes from a place of really wanting to connect with community. So there's such a big engagement and consultation process that they went through, and involved all stakeholders to try to come at even questions about how do you issue the apology? What are the words that the community wants to hear from the RCMP? How do we hold ourselves accountable in the future so that these things don't happen? So all of these things are happening, and they're exciting. And I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. Like I love that we're doing that work, and really grateful to the fact that this kind of conversation is happening. It's overdue, but it's happening.
Yeah, very much overdue, Huda. I completely agree. As a 20-year member of the RCMP, I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be part of a program, which is DICE, which recognizes that there are barriers. we call it a lot of fancy names, but yeah, colonialism does play a big, big role in a lot of the way some of our policies are shaped, and still some policies that exist. Um, DICE is a program that recognizes that, was developed because it recognized there are roadblocks to people becoming police officers. It might seem subtle that the communities that we serve the cops don't look like the communities that they serve in. That's a problem, because that's what comes out of it is those very issues that we reference in um, in Halifax. And my first posting, I asked to go to Halifax. I asked to go to Cove Harbor, and they didn't send me, which was very odd to me. I got to go to Surrey on the opposite end of the country where the Black people were very few. So DICE comes in and DICE is saying, yeah, you who just came from the Ivory Coast, from India, from wherever, come join the RCMP. It's not a career that you might choose because of the things that you've seen. If you're from Rwanda, you've seen police abuse their power, but we're encouraging you to come and experience this program. Come and see that there is an opportunity for you to be a police officer and to make change and to change the face of what the RCMP traditionally looks like. So it's a 3-week program that exposes you to the exact same training that I went through for 6 months. It just gives you a snapshot of the 3 weeks. It exposes you to our training academy. You get exposure to driving, to firearms, our drill. You do the same thing that the guys in the red surge wear, the iconic Mountie red uniform. So you get exposure to drill, deportment, a lot of physical running, training, weightlifting. You get exposed to what we go through for 6 months, but that's the fun part. But the aim of the program is to break down those barriers so that when you say, I want to become a police officer, you already has been exposed to it. So that barrier will no longer exist for you, that you know, I'm capable of doing it. I'm going in with my eyes wide open. I've experienced it. And there's mentors along the way to help you, myself being one of them, just to cheer you on, to encourage you. Because I frankly didn't have that when I joined. It was actually they were trying to get me to quit because I did not look like what a Mountie's supposed to look like. So thank you, Huda, for I was getting to that question, but thank you for notifying me of the time. I was saving that juicy one for last, but I'm glad we jumped into it. So I think we're kind of running short on time here. We have time for one more. Let's see. French requirements of the RCMP, that's all job related. Huda's getting some props here. So Huda, yeah, let's stay on this theme here. Why is it important to introduce yourself as a first Black Arab Canadian in CSIS? I would assume that would be what you're going about.
Yeah, I think most people see it as something celebratory. And for people who experience this, it's to acknowledge the fact that why was it in year 2002 that we have our first, Arab or Black women? So I'm third Black woman, and the first Black woman was in 2001. And so why did it take so long to get people in there? And I do teach at the University of Ottawa as well in terms of national security and diversity. And we've had, we talk about barriers to recruitment, but people were blocked from employment in this field in national security. Our access to information is not as good as it is in the US and in the UK. There's been an acknowledgement that recruiters were turning people away, and leadership people that were conducting interviews in terms of management and leadership did not want to see racialized people in this place of work. They didn't feel like we were Canadian enough to be there. So it's actually a bittersweet kind of thing to say, here, I was there. I was the first Muslim woman to encounter terrorism. Speaking Arabic was important to you for the job, for the mandate for keeping Canadians safe. And it took this long to get there. And still there was resistance to my identity, despite the fact that these identity factors were why I was able to contribute at such a high level, right? So it's not just to say that, I walked through the doors of CSIS as a first, it's to say that it's so complicated, it is so difficult. The organization needs people like me. There's no way you can keep Canadians safe without, a diverse workforce that you need to prepare for today, if not yesterday. So it's a complicated way of saying there's so much at stake if you do not value diversity and open up your doors and welcome people from all aspects of life so that they can contribute to keeping the country safe. And I think careers in national security, I encourage everyone to, I'm sure you're here because you're interested in the RCMP, you're interested in this public safety field. Honestly, I have no regrets, despite everything that I went through. I have no regrets to having joined, to be part of the community again and again, and to keep this conversation going, because it's so rewarding to be able to say, hey, I saved lives. Hey, I kept my community safe. I represented Canada abroad in the international engagements that the RCMP has. It's such an honor and it's such a privilege and it's so rewarding at so many levels. So I really encourage you all to continue to seek, your career, develop it, continue to network, continue to develop yourselves professionally, and hope to see you all in leadership positions within the RCMP and within the public safety field.
Okay, perfect. Alfonso, you have 30 seconds. What would you say to someone who is wanting to join the RCMP?
It's so hard to follow who the why you put me like this? Honestly, I think what I would tell them is to just try it out. You never know what is meant for you until you try it. And I think the best part about being here is that growth doesn't come, as you said, Jason, like growth doesn't come from being comfortable. Like I'm constantly uncomfortable every day in this job, but in a good way because it pushes you. And I think that's the thing is that the RSMP truly pushes you into your limits to explore the unknown, to see what impact you can make and the people that you can meet. I am not the most extroverted, even though I may seem not, I'm not the most extroverted person whatsoever. And yet every time I push myself, I've been rewarded here in the RCMP. So I really hope that the next person who faces that application looks and goes, okay, let me not think of the history, but let me think of the possibilities that this institution can give me in my career. Thank you.
Also, well said. Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I think that brings us to the close of our showcase. And speaking about the RCMP, so much more than just the RCMP. There's personal experiences as well. I think there's no organization you could join without speaking about the personal impact and your journey that brought you to the organization and the purpose of your work. I am big on purpose. I am big on making impact, young or old or experience, broken or together, wounded or not. It's good to share. It's good to say what you've been through because people benefit and people are strengthened as a result of it. So thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you attend the networking events with FYN on August 13th. I guess this is us here on the Avalanche platform from 4 to 5. Be sure to sign up for upcoming events. The FYN is hosting in-person learning days across the country throughout the year. They've added a few new cities to their schedule so you could find out where they'll be coming by. Check out the list of cities and dates on their wiki page. Registration is free, and you don't want to miss this opportunity to see the network and to meet with people in person. So thanks again, FYN, for having us. Alfonso, personal thank you for having me. And Huda, as always, what could I say? I still want to be like you when I grow up, Huda. I gotta write that book. That book is coming, I'm telling you.
I'm waiting for it.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.